All right, everybody, we are live again, and Madin, we are getting a feedback from you. But hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? It's been a long time since we did an English stream. So I have with me for this stream Madin, as always, and Kali, as always. So, how are you guys doing, Madin? Good to see you guys here. Kali, how are you doing?
Yeah, we're all good. We're all good, I think. I can't speak for Kylie, but I'm good.
Yeah, same here. Good to see you, Philo and Mahadin.
All right. Yeah. So today's stream, what we're gonna do is basically we're gonna review as we have been doing. I think we have become the review kings, basically, or whatever you review army, whatever you might want to call us. But we're gonna review a conversation that took place between a guest caller named Kerry and Muslim Lanter, whose real name is Muhammad Ali, and it's regarding basically the question was something akin to, but Kelly is gonna explain to the question to you in a much more detail. But the question was whether the non-Muslims are gonna get rewarded and for their good deeds, basically in uh, in the afterlife, basically. So, Kelly, maybe you want to explain the question a little bit more in detail, and we'll then jump right away into that. Uh, you know.
Yeah, sure. So the caller actually who joined the Muslim Lantern's stream asked a question about what is going to be the situation with the rewards of non-believers. I think I don't need to summarize what Muslim Lantern said because it's quite interesting the way he approached that question. And I think I found that interesting, and therefore I thought that we should have a review on this video. So instead of me summarizing his response, let's just hear what he says.
Yeah, I think we're all set. Let's go directly into this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run it in 1.25 and see if it you can hear it fine, and then we can adjust it whether we can go up or.
One of them is that there is so in the chapter of Muhammad, one of the questions that
the teachings of Allah and His Messenger. It's a definition of what the word Muslim means.
Okay, so there's a couple other questions that I have, or that like just don't completely make sense to me. But one of them is that there is so in the chapter of Muhammad, it talks a lot about how disbelievers' good deeds get dismissed on Judgment Day. But my question is, disbelievers can still be good people, so why do their good deeds get dismissed?
Yeah, good deeds are dismissed on the day of judgment, not dismissed in this world. So they can get something for what they do in this world. Allah says He gives them in return of what they do in this world, because what they did was for this world. Those people, you can use the term good people. We wouldn't agree with that terminology, by the way. They can do good things. That does not mean they're good people. There's a difference between the two. But when you say those people have still done something good, let's assume, for example, they give charity. What is the intention they have when they give in charity?
Well, there can be a variety of intentions.
Go ahead, give me. They're not believers, so what kind of intentions they have?
So they could be giving charity because they agree with the cause, or they feel empathy for the people who need the money. Like there's a couple different reasons as to why they could.
And there are many selfish reasons as well. For example, they want to feel good, because when you do that, you feel good. When you give others, you feel good yourself. They can be doing it so people can praise them and say, "Oh, look, this person is a charitable person. Look at all the good that he's doing." But all of these intentions that you mentioned, is any of them for the sake of God?
Not the ones that I mentioned. No.
Or any, because they don't believe in God to begin with, so they will never have an intention to do with God.
Mm-hmm.
So why should they expect God to reward them? Why should God reward the people who didn't do anything for Him? You're still with me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just.
Yeah, it's fine. You're
like it's a fair point.
Yeah. This is the thing. Look, if you didn't do it for Allah, then there's no point of Allah. Why would Allah reward you for it? You did it for this life. You did it for yourself. And Allah lives you in this life. He gives you provision. He lets you live. He shows mercy on you. But when the time,
I think he's already part of his response, and the primary response that he wanted to give, he's already given. So, Mahadin, what do you think on Philo? I'd like to hear your comments on this.
Right. I think there are a couple of points. Madin, you wanted to go? Right. Go ahead.
No, if you want to go first, depends. Do you want to flip a coin?
Sure. So what I was thinking of here is he's saying everything is selfish right now, and those, especially disbelievers, they are doing these selfish deeds. even if for the sense that they are doing it for their own
Philip,
good, they
Philip,
want to
one
feel it,
moment.
feel good.
Philip,
Yeah.
Philip, just to correct you, I don't think he said everything. Everybody's doing it for selfish reasons. I don't think he said that. He said you can do it for selfish reasons as well. Just to, yeah.
Okay, maybe. Okay, let me correct that. So
No,
most,
actually he played a trick over there, I think, because he tried the wordings he used seems to imply that he's allowing some sort of non-selfish reasons as well. But if you actually listen to his response, it seems that he's also indicating that these are only for selfish reasons. I think
selfish
the
reasons.
good
Yeah,
deeds are done
exactly.
only for selfish reasons,
Only for
because
selfish
otherwise
reasons.
his response wouldn't make sense. Already it doesn't make sense, but it wouldn't make sense at all then, even from his own worldview. What do you think,
Exactly.
Madan?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'll probably have to listen to that again because it didn't seem like that to me. It seemed as though he
Okay, so
said, he seemed like he said, and you can do it for selfish reasons as well.
yes,
And then he just proceeded to talk. But what you're trying to say is that he's not allowing for the opportunity for there to be a non-selfish reason at all.
exactly. If you We can listen to it again. Mahadan, can
Yeah,
you just
Yeah,
rewind it,
yeah. We
because
can
he did.
rewind it. Yeah.
You're right that he exactly this is the word. This is what he said when the lady tried to say that okay, maybe they feel empathy, or they feel attached to the cause, but then immediately he jumped in and said, and also there could be selfish reasons. And then he proceeded with giving all these reasons. And if you listen to his answer only makes sense if he's trying to say that there are only selfish reasons for which
So
a
these are
person
all
does good
selfish
deeds.
reasons. In his mind,
Exactly.
he's trying to say, imply
Yes.
rather, is that
Yeah.
all these reasons are selfish reasons, and the
Selfish
only
reasons.
unselfish reason in his mind, only
Mhm.
unselfish reason is when you do it for Allah,
For God.
basically. And that's, yeah,
For God.
for God.
Yeah.
That's the
And
only
we can listen to his response. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we can
I
listen
think
to his response again.
we'll rerun it basically. Yeah.
about how disbelievers' good deeds get dismissed on Judgment Day. But my question is, disbelievers can still
Not dismissed in this world.
why do their good deeds get dismissed?
Yeah, good deeds are dismissed on the day of judgment, not dismissed in this world. So they can get something for what they do in this world. Allah says He gives them in return of what they do in this world, because what they did was for this world. Those people, you can use the term good people. We wouldn't agree with that terminology, by the way. They can do good things. That does not mean they're good people. There's a difference between the two. But when you say those people have still done something good, let's assume, for example, they give charity. What is the intention they have when they give charity?
Well, there can be a variety of intentions.
Go ahead, give me. They're not believers, so what kind of intentions they have?
So they could be giving charity because they agree with the cause, or they feel empathy for the people who need the money. Like there's a couple different reasons as to why they could.
And there are many selfish reasons as well. For example, they want to feel good, because when you do that, you feel good. When you give others, you feel good yourself. They can be doing it so people can praise them and say, "Oh, look, this person is a charitable person. Look at all the good that he's doing." But all of these intentions that you mentioned, is any of them for the sake of God?
Not the ones that I mentioned. No.
Or
Yeah,
any,
you
because they don't
know,
believe in God to begin with, so they will never have an intention to do with God.
Yeah, you can pause it away. Yeah.
yeah. So what it looks like is it seemed like he was trying to say that if you feel good, right, and that is
Yeah.
the selfish reason, and so it's like there's no such thing as a selfless act type of thing. Everything
Yeah.
is just for selfish reasons. So that might be the type of thing that he's trying to say. I know it sounds like a bit of trickery because, or it could be right, or it could be as though there's a possibility that there is
Yeah.
and there are other reasons that are beyond that. But he's trying to say, or it could be, but it's difficult to interpret it because he then proceeds to say, or it could be because it feel good. Because when I'm not sure whether it's a separate point he's making, or is this continuation of the same point, because it makes you feel good, and then he tries to say because it might get them praise, you might get some reputational benefit, other people will
Yeah.
look at you better, these things. So I'm not sure whether that's what he means by it makes you feel good, or whether so is he trying to say that if it doesn't make you feel good for the purposes of fame, then there is that selfless
No.
altruistic
I
act?
think
No. No.
Madin,
No.
the keyword here is, or the key phrase that he uses is that any for sake of Allah is I think I latched on to that basically, right?
Yes, we
And
can latch on to that as well.
yeah,
But just to clarify what Mohammed Ali said, I agree with Mahadan that he used probably. I mean, it isn't clear whether
used
he
to
is
be
allowing
sure. Yeah,
for any
yeah.
sort of non-selfish reasons or
Mhm.
for a good deed. But I think I'm clear on the fact that he's categorizing these two intentions separately. The two that is one that is your feel good, and the other one is that you'll be, or it could be because you want praise from others. So he means that he's taken these two intentions as separate. When you feel good, and you could categorize every good deed, whether it's non-self, whether you could get, you could superficially call it non-selfish, but you could categorize every good deed into that it makes you feel good because ultimately you feel like doing something good. So I
Right.
think in a way he's implying that whatever good deed you do, it makes you feel good, whether it's because of empathy or whether because you feel
Right.
attached to a cause, for whatever reason you do a good deed, it ultimately makes you feel good. Or in addition, you could also have some other selfish reasons as well, which is maybe you want praise from others. So from what I understand, he's implying that all the good deeds that we do, indirectly or directly, they're selfish. And also, we could look at it from this perspective, as he said, none of them are for the sake of Allah. So we could also address that point separately if we want, but we can also address the point that are all good deeds selfish, or there are some selfless good deeds as well.
Yeah, I mean, the charitable interpretation. If thing is, I don't think that there can, because the more I know about this sort of thinking, I think it's actually more likely that he probably means that there is no such thing as a selfless good deed, right? Or something. Everything has some degree of selfishness. Perhaps that's what, possibly because given the background of how I know how these people argue, I think that's not an implausible thing that they would probably hold. That's probably more likely, I think. But if I had to be charitable, if I didn't know this guy, because of the vagueness in what he's saying, it's not very clear that he's not been extremely precise. It's not clear to me whether he's saying that when he started off by saying that it might make you feel good. He's not then going to give an example of a specific example of how it might make you feel good, such as that it might give you fame. So those two. So when the fame example is to exemplify what it means by it makes you feel good. That could mean. So if I was being charitable, if he was a different person, that could mean that there is a selfless reason, where there is no fame involved, there's no trying of showing offness involved, which counts as altruistic in his mind, right? Now, given what I know though about these guys, I don't think Kylie's interpretation is far fetched, right? At
Right.
all, because I think they would try to smuggle in this sort of attitude, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
But in
yeah.
that case, Mahadan, in the case that he is allowing the possibility of a selfless good act, then he has not addressed that point at all. He is just let it go, and that's one of the reasons that I'm assuming, or my understanding is that he does not allow for any sort of selfless good deed, the possibility of any sort of selfless good deed, because he did not address that point as any at all. That if there is a possibility of a selfless good deed by a non-believer, then
Mm.
what is his reasoning of
Right.
for
Well,
God to not
if I
reward it?
wanted, if I wanted to be charitable to him, and what I would say there, then I think that his central and main point is the fact that whether or not there is a selfless good deed, or whether there is a selfish good deed, and he's just given an additional point. Some people can just do it for fame, but some people, and let's say charitable now, but it's also allowing to the possibility that some people can do it genuinely for good reason, altruistic motivations that are nothing to do with selfishness. Either way, if they're not for God, why would you get rewarded? I think that's what. So if I had to be charitable, I think his central point is predicated
Mhm.
on the God part, right? That's why he
Right,
didn't cover
right.
them. He just moved on to that main point at the end. I think that's how I
Mhm.
would be. But I don't think your interpretation is bad either. What I would do is, if I was in a debate with him, I'd allow him to clarify that. Basically, that's
Right,
all.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I
agree.
agree. I
I
agree.
agree. That's why I said that the central part of his argument is that if you're not doing
If
for God, basically that's not a good deed. Basically,
right, right.
it's a definitional thing, pretty much, right? Why would
And
I consider it to be a good deed if it's not from my Allah, right? My
Even
favorite,
that, even
religion,
that.
basically.
I don't think if did he say that? I'm not. We'll have to see it. I don't want to get bogged up now in what he said, so we should move on very quickly. But
Right,
even then, I
right,
don't
right.
think he's saying that a good deed is only when you do it for God. I think he's saying why should you get rewarded? If correct me if I'm wrong. I'll have to see it again. But
Yeah,
why should
I think you are right. I mean, I'm reading a little bit too much between the lines. You're right. He
yeah,
said, "Why should God reward it?" Basically, right? But
yeah.
then I
In a
think
way,
we're debating definitions. Basically,
yeah, yeah. Let's not
does
go there
God,
then.
yeah,
Yeah,
does God reward good deeds? And
yeah,
what is a good deed? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can then make a connection pretty much here, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So let's deal with that, right? So that
Mhm.
so his main point being that if a good deed is not done for God, or if a deed, if let's not even use the word good, then if a deed is not done for the sake of God, then why should God reward it? That is his main argument. And my simple counter question would be, uh, do even Muslims or believers, are even their deeds, are they for the sake of Allah, or are they for the sake of their own afterlife, for the sake of attaining heaven and for the sake of being protected from hell? Isn't that their main motivation? And if he says
Exactly.
that it isn't, let's say, although he wouldn't, but let's say he tries to say, well, that is one of the reasons, but that is not the main reason. I would argue that that is not one of the reasons. That is the only reason that they are doing it. Why? Because let me take a scenario where God asked or instructed humans to follow a certain guideline. Let's say it's the same, everything that He has asked humans to do, all of that is the same as Muslims believe it to be. But in the afterlife, there is no hell or heaven. He says, just do it for the sake of for this, because it is my instruction. Just submit to me, and let's see who submits. Let's see how many Muslims would still do it. None of them would do it. There would be no motivation for them to do it. And I think if they're honest to them, if they're honest, I think they would agree that yes, they would not do anything. They would not follow any of the guidelines that Allah gives them, if it is for nothing. If it is just because God said it, and there is no reward or punishment attached to it.
I agree. I agree. But probably one, Madan, you wanted to go for it. Go for it, please.
no. Philo, you go.
Or no, Madan, you go first.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you unmuted the mic first, so go for it, please.
No, it's not a competition. It's not you. Whoever wants to go, I don't mind. I
Yeah,
can.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. That's true. I mean, the way he kind of develops this, I mean, he seems to be saying that it makes you happy or whatever, but that applies to every scenario, right? So clearly, even if you do it for God, you're doing it for God because it makes you happy that you're doing it for God, right? If he's playing the trick that we have seen in, I don't know how much people have watched Friends. There was an episode in Friends where,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's a famous episode.
yeah, exactly. There's no such thing as a selfish good deed, and I can't remember who the characters were, but they were trying to. I think it was Joey trying, or
Joey,
maybe,
it was
yeah,
Joey and Phoebe.
yes, and they
Joey
were trying.
being and it was a surprise coming from Joey actually, because Joey is the dumbest actually character, and but he says something very smart. I mean, he's a very smartest guy in that episode, I think.
Yeah, he was the philosopher in that episode. But I think he said
Yeah,
something like, "There's no such thing as a selfish good,
yeah,
selfless good, or unselfish good act, because anything that you can ever think about, whether you give charity, whether you love somebody, whether you try and do something, yeah, you're always doing it because it makes you to some extent happy, or you feel good about it, or something like that." And he tries to challenge the rest of his friends. I think it was Phoebe, to give me a counterexample, and the entire episode consisting of them. I mean, it was a side part of the episode, but intermingled throughout the episode was them trying to find a genuine scenario um, where it was entirely selfless. And initially, it wasn't that deep. It was more like, if you give somebody coffee, you're doing it because maybe you want the job. that they might help you with, or you if you're being good to your friends, maybe because the friend will give you something back, and that's why you're being good to your friends. Or if you're allowing let's say your friend wants to stay the night over, maybe you would find that entertaining and interesting, and you don't want to be on your own. So there's a sense of selfish pursuit of your own happiness that's coming from it. And then by the end of it, though, in the end of it, it kind of whittled down to the fact that anything that you do, almost anything, has some sort of pleasure that you also get, right? Even the most seemingly unselfish act, like an act of sacrifice, suicide, that would lead to your own death in order to improve the well-being of another person. Even there, it makes you feel good and elated that you're going to make the well-being of another person good.
You get your self-worth basically elevated to a certain level, in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have an interest. You have basically an interest. And that, maybe I'm giving it a more philosophically polished understanding from the episode. But in the essence, that's what they kind of whittle it down to. And if that's the case, that I don't see why, if he's going on with that, that's not a point that bludgeons the atheist or the non-believer. It bludgeons the believer, the theist, the Muslim as well. That's the case. That standard is like almost like an unfalsifiable standard, where there is no such thing as selflessness. Everything is selfish, because ultimately, if it's coming from you and you have an interest, whatever that interest is, it could be an interest to sacrifice yourself for everybody, for anything, for complete strangers. Even that, because it satisfies your interest, it's not really altruistic. But this, like I said, it also applies to the theist, because and in context, a theist would be getting pleasure out of obeying God. That's his interest, any interest. So if he needs to obey the dictates of God, he wants to obey the dictates of God, it satisfies his interest, right? If he wants to go to heaven, it satisfies his interest. If he wants to avoid hell, it satisfies his interest. Everything satisfies their interest. So there's no such thing in his worldview, in any worldview, whether you're a theist or an atheist, there's no such thing as total selflessness. And therefore, is there anything really a good deed? Now, if that's the point he's trying to make, again, I'm just interpreting what he might be saying. If that's the point he's trying to make, then he's literally said that there is no such thing as a really good deed. Yeah, and that seems a bit, weird, right from the bat of it. Philo, do you want to say something before I say something else?
No, I just wanted, I just want to corroborate your point. There's no such thing as a good deed unless until it's for God. Basically, that's what he has made it definitionally. And one point that Kylie made, basically, and I wanted to say that none of the Muslims would do anything, any of these deeds if there was no concept of heaven or hell being, given by God. And I said they might still do it, but that would still be for selfish reasons, for the same reasons that Mahadin just said a few minutes ago, or probably even a few seconds ago, that they might just feel good that something like creator of the whole universe, we are just praying to him, and that makes us feel happy about it or feel good about it, basically.
Yeah.
So those kind of things could still happen.
Let me just say another thing. If that's what he is doing, again, I'm trying to be charitable with him, but if that's what he's doing, where he's saying there is no such thing as a good deed unless and until it is for God, then that's a straightforward contradiction, right? For the reasons that I've stated, precisely because what is the reasons he's saying? So he developed his reasoning in the following sense, in the sense that there's no such thing as a unselfish good deed or a selfless good deed, precisely because it makes you happy. It satisfies your interest, right? Now, if that's the principle, then he needs to think of, when he says unless and until, he needs to justify it, unless you're doing it for the sake of God, right? He needs to think of, therefore, something that is outside of his principle, something that is not caught by his principle. But once he's deployed his principle, which is that since it satisfies my interest, if it satisfies my interest, then it's selfish or not a good deed. Yeah. Once he's done that, if you notice, it contradicts what it says subsequently, which is unless and until you do it for the sake of God. But in that scenario, you're also satisfying your interest. So he's basically making a rule and then exempting this special kind of worship or obeying of God's dictates as exempt from it without any further reasoning, right? But without that reasoning, it's a contradiction. He just literally said, if it comes from your interest, it's selfish. But when you're doing it for God, it's also selfish, right? That's what it should be. So it's like saying, yeah, it's a contradiction, because you can say it's an analytical contradiction, right? Like a square triangle. So he literally said a square can't be a triangle, and then just went on to say unless if a square can be a triangle. That's what it sounds to me. Like a really, really, analytical philosopher would just say it like that. Like if you had to write it down into like a philosophical equation, it's just a straightforward contradiction.
Right. All right, Kelly, you wanted to add something? Shall we run the video further ahead, see what he has to say?
Yeah, and I was just wanted to say that I do agree with Mahadin and Philo as well, that yes, some humans might still tend to follow God's instruction, but then what would be their motivation? And once you find out their motivation, you'll find out that ultimately that motivation would lead to some sort of uh,
Self-interest.
selfishness. There would be some
Self-interest,
sort
right.
of self-interest behind it, some sort of,
Right.
let's say they feel what you call self-righteous, right? That everybody, I'm the only one who, or I'm one of the few people who does it only because God said it, and that makes him feel special.
Yeah,
And
I
why
think,
would yeah, so these are the
yeah, I
kinds of
think,
reasons that one would have.
yeah, what Mahadan says, and I agree with both of you. There can't be any deed that you can do that can only be for God. Basically, you'll
Exactly.
always have something wrapped up as your own self-interest, no matter what.
I
Basically,
agree.
that's what
I
you're
agree.
saying, I think, right? And
Yeah.
I think I
So,
agree. Yeah.
let me just also elaborate what Kyle is saying. I mean, so the parallels in the atheist worldview, let's say, or the natural worldview, whatever you want to call it, is that you can think of it like this: that there are certain actions that are catered towards boosting your self-interest. For example, you might give charity because it might make you look good to others, and this might enable you to have a better social network and improve your social status, etc., your fame, etc. Now, think about the same act just without those motivations at all, where you give to charity and nobody knows about it, right? No one knows about it. Now, clearly, those actions are different, and you can put it on a continuum or a hierarchy. You can say, for example, yes, every single action that you do comes from your self-interest to some extent, but that doesn't mean every single action that you do is equally selfish, right? Some actions are minimally selfish, or so unselfish that we like to call them selfless, especially when it goes to a significant detriment to yourself. For example, if somebody decides to kill themselves and sell all their assets, sell all their homes, transfer everything, and this person had the ability to live a selfish, hedonistic life, but instead just gave it to complete strangers. According to him, according to this the Muslim lantern person, that would be equally selfish, right? And maybe I'm being uncharitable here. Equally selfish as somebody who went and just killed orphans, or took everything from orphans, or pretended to be charitable, but he was like a very conniving character. They're just the same. Well, that's not right, right? They are separate. They're different. So you can put it on a sliding scale or a continuum and think on, some things are more altruistic and some things are more unaltruistic, right? Now let's apply this in the sphere of what Kylie is saying, in the sphere of theism or Islam. What Kylie said applies as well. People can, for example, for wanting to go to, not necessarily for the sake of God, like Kylie said, but for the sake of themselves, right? Because they want to lavishly enter the pearly gates of heaven, be surrounded by rivers of honey, or be given praise and all this, or have eternal life. All of these temptations, people can, and they do it for those reasons. God said he's going to give you sawab, he's going to give you rewards. These reinforcements clearly are attractive, right? People can do it for those reasons, and furthermore, because they want to avoid hell. So that's the equivalent of the atheist who wants fame and luxury and all this stuff, or money or whatever. That's the equivalent. But then you can think of something very similar, maybe similar, where you might just do it for the sake of Allah, whatever that means. Where even if Allah didn't give you all these things, just because He said so, maybe that's the closest approximation you can get of what I said about the unselfish person under naturalism, under atheism, where you're not doing it for all these lavishes, for heaven or hell, or to avoid hell, but you're doing it just because you love Allah, right? But that is also based on Muslim Lantern's argument, but he's not clearly reasoned how it's different. Satisfies your self-interest. You love Allah because it makes you happy. It makes you feel good. So what I'm trying to draw is parallels where on the atheist worldview, yes, you do have the extreme hedonistic version of charity, and then you have the very selfless version of charity where you kill yourself for others. And on the atheist worldview, you have the extreme hedonistic view of doing a good deed or following God's command because you want to go to heaven, extremely hedonistic. Or you have according to him, the selfless version or the really good version where you do it for the sake of Allah. So where's the difference? Right?
Right, Martin. And one more thing I was thinking, and maybe you guys can correct me if my thinking is right or not. Can we insert this euthyphros here, saying what are these deeds you're talking about? I mean, somebody can say I'm murdering in the name of Allah, and somebody can come to us and say no, that's not exactly right because that's not written in the scriptures. But this guy deeply believes that whoever God he believes in wants him to do these deeds for him, right? Now, are those deeds automatically becoming good, basically, right? So the question might be probably, does that God really exist or not? Or maybe he wants or not. But at least the question could be raised, basically. Are the deeds automatically good because that you're doing that for that particular God? Or there is some independent standard that you're looking at, basically. And if that's the case, then what ML is saying is probably not fitting the bill pretty much. That's what I think. But I wanted to know your thoughts on this, basically.
Who are you asking?
Both of you. What do you guys think? I
Yeah,
mean, if somebody...
Mahadan would be more qualified to answer this. Do you think
So,
that what applies over here?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. I mean, this Emil person, she seems like a nice, sweet person, but I don't think because she got stomped for a bit and she just went, "Oh, that's a good point." So I think she may not have the philosophical kind of like deep rigor. Maybe I don't know. I'm just assuming from the tiny bit of what she said so far. But
Yeah,
that's,
Mahadan. Just
yeah.
to correct it, ML by ML Philo meant Muslim lantern,
Muslim lantern.
and
Muslim
the
lantern.
lady's name I think it's Carrie
It's
something.
Kerry.
Carrie.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. I thought her name was Emily for a minute. Then I thought
No.
it was something like that. I can't see the screen properly. You see, it's
Yeah.
Kerry. All right, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, and what's the Muslim lantern's name? Sorry.
Muhammad Ali.
Okay. What did you call him? You call him Emil?
I called ML
ML.
Muslim lantern.
Initials.
ML
Muslim
for
lantern.
Muslim lantern. Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry. See, I'm not completely used to these guys. You see, I don't really barely listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these are your next door neighbors, man.
Oh, is it? Well, we should.
I'm not sure about Muslim lantern though. Are you sure that he lives
I don't
there?
know where he's from. I don't know. Is he from London? Probably. Is he? He's from
Well,
London, right?
I've seen a few videos of him being in Speaker's Corner, so I'm not sure. Maybe he goes there time to time, or maybe he resides there.
Yeah,
It's a
I don't know.
possibility.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but
it's
maybe.
still much closer to Madin than us, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, the basic question, Madin and Kelly, I wanted to
All right,
put
Philo.
in was
Philo.
yeah.
Let Kylie answer this for a minute. Let me just quickly take a 2-minute break. I'll be back.
Sure.
I'll just answer a phone call, basically.
Sure.
Okay.
No problem.
Just
Yeah. So to your question, my response would be, I think yes, it would apply, of course, because it applies to any situation of a moral question. It's just another moral question. But I think in the context of a reward, I think you could say that once again. M- so your question, let me put it like this. Let's say that the question is, does God reward for certain deeds because those deeds are worthy of reward due to an external standard on their own meaning, or
Right.
God rewards them because He has just chosen them these acts randomly, and therefore it's just a random choice. So
Right.
yeah, it
No,
does apply, I think, in that case.
I'm trying to put his statement into scrutiny. Basically, he
Hmm.
says a a deed is not good deed unless until it's in the name of God.
Yeah.
Basically, right? It's not done in the
Hmm.
name of God. Basically, and I'm saying in that case, any deed you can say would become if it's done in the name of God. Basically,
Oh,
any
okay,
deed you
okay.
consider
But
basically
in
bad, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if somebody does a
In that
deed
case,
that's yeah,
oh, you're right, and I think that's a very good. That's an important point if that's what you're trying to say, because
right,
if that is what Muhammad Ali's point is, then it doesn't matter what the actual instruction is from God.
right,
Let's say there's a God, and He gives us an instruction to do an act A, but the person B, but a person believes that he should, let's say, commit a murder in the sake of
or
Allah, for
or
the sake of
rape,
Allah,
or
because he,
yeah,
yeah,
rape
yeah,
or
for
whatever,
any
or
deed we
yeah,
consider
anything.
evil, but he thinks that that deed is something that he should do because it makes sense for him from his perspective, and he's doing it from for the sake of Allah. So,
Right,
is according to Muhammad Ali, would it be the case that any deed which is done for the sake of Allah, that would
is
be
good
a
deed.
good, he would consider that a good deed? Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think that's a fair question to Muhammad Ali.
Right, right.
That would he consider any deed which is which that person has done with the intention of doing it for the sake of Allah, would Muhammad Ali consider it a good deed?
Exactly.
So
And
he
that's
should answer to that question.
right,
And
right.
I would just reiterate the point that Mahadin said, which is related to this. So it's another. So I would say I would put it in addition to this, and that is, and Mahadin have already put it, but let me just reiterate it because it's an important point. We shouldn't miss it. That is, from what Muhammad Ali has just said, it would be a necessary conclusion, I think, that any deed which is done uh, not for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of Allah, no matter what it is, it would be equally bad. So, for example, a person commits a murder, a non-believer does it, let's say, and he does not do it for the sake of Allah. He does it because he wants to do it, because it makes him. He does it for selfish reasons. And then there's another person who does charity because it makes him feel good. According to Muhammad Ali,
They are both
both
on
of
the
these,
equal
they
ground, right?
both did similar acts. There is no from a moral perspective, there's no difference between what they did, because
Distinction between
both of them did, none of them they committed or did a good deed. Both of them did an evil deed, because both of these deeds, none of these deeds were for the sake of Allah. So they are effectively the same. So I think it's just another question that would arise. So your question and this question, I think both of these questions would go hand in hand.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Riley, I'll just to make a bit of a small clarification on the example of the. I wouldn't necessarily phrase it like it makes them happy, right? Although unless you're making the point that the charitable person is doing it for fame, right?
Hmm.
Um, what I would say is the strong example of a genuine altruistic act is maybe if you give the most charity, because in spite of whether it makes your current circumstances good, almost self-sacrificially, right? So if you mean by it makes them happy in the sense that it makes you happy that you're sacrificing yourself for others, right?
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
yeah, I get that. I want to distinguish that from some, at least for the audience, that when you do give charity, there is two different forms here, and
Hmm.
these are not the only forms, but just to
Yes.
illustrate it in an elementary way, that you have a situation where you can give to charity, but you're just doing it in the public limelight in order to get hold political office, perhaps in order to look good to your friends. That's one way of making you happy. And there's another way of making you happy, which is that you actually genuinely don't do it for those reasons. You genuinely do it for the happiness of others. In fact, your happiness is centered on the happiness of others. So let me repeat that. Your happiness is centered on the pleasure and happiness of other people, and maybe even to great detriment to yourself, that you will undergo tremendous suffering. So people like that, and there are people who are like that, they will undergo like people who would undergo tremendous suffering, tremendous hard work, tremendous labor, and tremendous self-infliction, and tremendous loss. And all of that is predicated on the happiness of other people, right? Now, do you get some degree of satisfaction of your interest? When I say interest, I don't mean just pleasure in a hedonistic sense. Yes, your interest is satisfied because this is something that you wanted to do, right? But the fact that what you want to do is less about you and more about others is what makes that act highly altruistic, right? And given that we can differentiate this from somebody who wants to do something primarily for themselves, like they want to hoard all the resources, that also makes them happy. But this time he's making it happy in a very pursuit of only your own interest type of way, where you don't care about the happiness of other people. And I want to distinguish those two scenarios. I think Kylie has showed up twice.
Yes, I'll leave one of my IDs. I leave from there. I just wanted to change my computer.
Yeah.
All right.
Just to firmly make the point though, in like philosophical literature, there's no such thing as a selfless good deed thing. It isn't really compelling to most people, right? Most moral philosophers think that something that is extremely minimally self-interested is what we call an highly altruistic act, right? So think of the greatest example of the most altruistic act that you can think of, the highest conceivable altruistic act that you can think of, right? That would be probably the most altruistic act. And to call this, selfish is basically a problem in our language. More, of course, it comes from you, from your own will. The mere fact that it comes from your own will doesn't mean it was selfish. Do you get it? So that's how they make the distinction in the philosophical literature. Yeah, it's will satisfaction, right? You're satisfying an interest of your will, but that interest is predicated on the enhancement and achievement of the happiness of other people, despite to great cost to yourself sometimes, and that is what we call an extremely selfless act. So we can just reject what Muslim Lantern is saying, that everything is just selfish, because people don't agree with that. We don't think everything is selfish. It comes from your will, it's satisfaction of an interest, but that interest is not your selfish interest. It's a selfless interest. We can see, if we just change the language, now we look at it differently. It's a selfless interest, right? It's a selfless interest because by definition, you can never achieve your selfless interest without having an interest in the beginning, from the get-go. Yeah, it has to come from you. If it didn't come from you, then would it even be a moral act? Of course. So you have to be motivated towards the selfless interest, which is otherness, other people. And the more sacrificial it is, you can say it's higher up the hierarchy of being very altruistic. So if we just change the language, then we can just reject what the Muslim Lantern is saying.
I think I agree, Madin, and especially that point that it's a limitation of our language, probably, that we don't have this kind of a language where we can say, the most altruistic act probably that you can conceive is probably, is you can still consider it to be the altruistic act, and then we won't get into this philosophical but problem of no action is altruistic at all, kind of. But anyways, what Madan, what I'm thinking is, let's make the link public. If anybody wants to join, they can join. And I have already made the link public, so I'm gonna in fact display it over here as well. So anybody who's willing to ask us any question, maybe chat about this topic, or ask any different question about anything else relating philosophy or the things that we talk about. Before we do that, guys, we have a Patreon page for us. If you think we are doing something worthwhile, we are bringing some happiness, joy to you. Maybe unaltruistic, maybe altruistic. You be the judge. But look at our Patreon page. It's Patreon/Philosapiens, and there's another Buy Me a Coffee page as well. So if you want, again, unaltruistic act from you, for us, it's going to be a little bit of help. And there's the Buy Me a Coffee page, buymeacoffee.com/Philosapiens. And if you do that, we might be able to, I don't know, I'm not gonna I was thinking I won't say it, but since we are in the middle of this stream, I'll say we might be able to buy some good audio systems if we get supported by you guys. So maybe we'll have we'll have good mics set up and good system set up. So if you can, please do try and donate as much as you can. But yeah, thanks. I'll keep it short here. And so, anything you wanted to add to that, Maden, Kali? I think we're done with this review, right? Or shall we move on with? Is there anything left, Kali, on this?
I
Video?
don't think so. Maybe can you just check what are the other timestamps? What are the
Yeah,
topics
we
that have
can
been covered in the
always
video?
do that, right? We
Just
can
if
always
you
do
just
that.
over the Judgment Day.
Yeah, can you see? So, good deeds of the disbelievers, the Judgment Day. You want to have a listen to it, and let's see. Let's listen to some of these. If we find it interesting, maybe
Yeah,
we'll comment
let's see.
on it. And if not, if somebody joins in between, then we will probably keep it aside and then have
Well,
conversation with the guests, right?
I want to try something interesting. I've seen people doing doing a live reaction of a live video that is just going on. Have you seen that?
I have seen that. Is there anything good going on? We can do
I
that.
don't know. I was just
We
thinking
we
that
haven't
maybe,
tried that. Martin, what do you think?
but I don't
Sorry,
know
say
if there's any
again?
good live stream going on.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
So yeah, when
It would
some
be
of
a
the
bit
guys.
too random, but I was just thinking that
Yeah,
it's.
I think I've
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 seen
seen
them,
lazy
but I
do
don't think
that
there's
basically. Yeah.
anyone. There's
Yeah.
anyone. There's no one interesting live right now. I think there's Adam Seeker. Adam Seeker just had 200K subscribers. Yeah,
Right.
have you listened to his song? He's released a song. It's quite
No, I
good.
haven't. I haven't. I haven't
It's
listened to
quite
it.
nice.
It is okay. Okay. I think I know the guy who wrote Sahil's song. I think the same guy wrote his as well, or wrote and
Uh-huh.
composed probably the same guy. I think
I'm
his
not
name
sure.
is
I'm not.
Mrityunjay, right? Mrityunjay or something like that. I
Uh-huh.
think.
I've not
Right.
listened to Sahil song,
Yeah, I
but
think
yeah,
he's
singing
got
is a
a
good.
he's got some talent. I mean, some crazy
Mhm.
talent.
No, I mean
So,
it's a genuinely good song. I mean, he has put in some effort into it. It's not
yeah,
just.
yeah. Definitely. I mean, I
It
haven't
doesn't look
listened to
half
this
baked.
one, but I
Yeah, it doesn't
heard
look half baked.
Sahil's song. So
Yeah,
yeah, so people are man have talent. I mean, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, there's no doubt about it. You can find some really good talented guys over there. So anybody, Bilal is here.
Hi,
Hi
Bilal.
everybody. Hi
I
Bilal.
remember.
Yeah.
I recall. I think he
Yeah,
commented on our
Bilal,
channel
last
on
I
some of
think
the
last
videos,
time
right?
he wanted to, yeah, he asked about some English streams. So finally, Bilal, English
Yeah,
stream is
yeah,
here.
Bilal,
If
you
you want to
can
join, and yeah,
come on,
come on if you want to
join
talk.
the stream if you want.
I think he last time I remember he wrote that he is a little shy or something like that, or he.
No, he's. I think he mentioned that too bad it's not in English. I think he mentioned
Yeah,
something
he
like that.
did write that, and then I responded, and probably he'll clarify. I think I remember him saying something like that. I don't have, yeah, I don't usually go on live streams or something like that, or I'm shy. Maybe I'm, mixing up people, right? Somebody else
Yeah.
said, Major Reynolds said that earlier. So I haven't seen Major Reynolds in a long time, basically, right? So yeah, he's gone missing. If you're listening, Major Reynolds, say hi so that we know that you are alive.
So let's, since we're just waiting, are we waiting for the people? Let me just say something else then about the video, perhaps, if you guys
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
sure.
Yeah,
Sure,
Right.
sure.
there's plenty of other things that you can get from this. I mean, I think what I'm noticing is that there's a bit of a. I don't think the girl who posed the question, because I've not seen the rest of the video, whether she adequately defended her position, but she could. I think they're coming from two different perspectives, right? And the girl, almost innocently, almost innocently, is perhaps under the impression that she's thinking that she's dealing with a benevolent deity, right? Uh, and the benevolent deity will clearly want to at least reward, let's say, or be nice to beings who are also nice, right? Let's say that's kind of what benevolence means, or something like that. So a benevolent deity, if you're a very charitable person, you've been very sacrificial, very good with humanity. You've given a lot, let's say, and we call these good deeds. Then clearly God should be also giving them a lot of praise or reward or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's how she almost innocently is approaching the situation, whereas the Muslim lantern is approaching it from the perspective that if you're not doing it for the sake of God, why would God reward you? In other words, God is a selfish being. Like God only cares whether you cater to his ego. Let's say, not only do you give charity, but you have to give him the stamp of approval, get his stamp of approval or something. You have to do it. You have to do it for the sake of him, right? Not for the fact that people are suffering, not for the fact that there's lots of horror or lots of turmoil on this world, and we want to alleviate this, but you need to do it to satisfy an already self-sufficient being. Yeah. So if you notice, this girl actually is coming from a very, very compassionate place. So this girl is actually evincing the characteristics of compassion, what we mean by compassion. That is because that is what normally you would think, right? That is what somebody who is thinking compassionately would ask. Why does the being just want to be egotistically praised? Why doesn't the being care about the fact that people are doing good things and give reward that way?
Madan, I haven't heard the conversation, so I just wanted to add this point, that it is quite possible that this Muslim lantern, Muhammad Ali, has already softened her towards Islam, basically, right? And she's
Possibly.
probably already halfway there, right? And that's why she's asking these questions. I might be wrong. Kali probably
That's fine.
has heard these conversations properly, so he might be able to tell you that, right?
Yeah. Let me just finish. Let me just finish the point that I was making, though. I was building up to the point, right? So she seems to be thinking about it in that kind of innocent frame of mind. Maybe I don't know who she is, but Muhammad Ali or Muslim lantern seems to be giving you a very selfish, hedonistic version of God, almost more like a tyrant, right? And that's why they're talking cross purposes, right? This part of the conversation should therefore lead to discussing what God should be doing, right? If it's a good God, if it's a benevolent God, then he shouldn't be thinking like a tyrant and stipulating that in order to be a righteous person, a good person, you have to do it for my sake, right? In other words, this is subtly a version of the problem of evil, right? Again, so this is the problem of evil. If God is a benevolent being, merciful being, compassionate being, why does he want this? Want set up things in this manner? A benevolent being ought not do it like that. He ought to reward the selfless non-Muslim. I mean, I have a problem anyway with the idea that good people should be rewarded, but that's another conversation. That is also part of, I would say, the problem of evil. But if the good people are going to be, if people are going to be rewarded, if you're a benevolent, so if you think about it from the problem of evil, if you start off with the definitions of God, the attributes of God, then God ought to be rewarding people for their good acts. God should not be selflessly requiring the acts to be in his name, right? And this can be demonstrated like an analytical truth, almost like if you think about what it means to be a benevolent being, then this is contradicting it. So it's like the problem of evil. Here's some evil. How do you explain this if God is a benevolent or merciful being? Well, you can't explain it, therefore God doesn't exist. So she should be building up to making this point if she had the analytical resources. I don't know if she does or not.
I agree. Yeah.
You should be making that point. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
okay, Madan, you want to add something? Then we'll talk to.
I know
Said.
I can annoyingly talk if I need to. I know that, but
Well,
I
that's
don't
why
think.
what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave you with Saeed. You can talk. You can talk to Saeed.
Saeed will defend the youth of dilemma.
Right, right.
Well, not defend the youth of debunk the youth of dilemma. Sorry. What I wanted to say, everything that we've said, if anybody's been listening to, I just want to land the point home. Is if you believe that indeed it could, because the divine command theorist doesn't want to concede that God is arbitrary, right? In which case anything could have been made good. If he was benevolent, he was benevolent. It could have been, or any other in between. As long as it was held by God, that would become good. That would just render it arbitrary, and therefore you don't have a sound moral theory. It'll be completely subjective to whatever is the case. That's also a point that Kylie tried to make a second ago, I think. Now that, upon reflection, now that I've thought about it, yeah, I think that's what he was trying to say as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I was trying
I
to
think
say
that, yeah. So if we go down that route and they want to avoid the arbitrary hone and they instead push forward that no, God cannot be benevolent, good, because they already conceded. Therefore, the reason God cannot be benevolent is because if God is to be good, he has to have the property of benevolence, which means it's the benevolence that makes God good, not God that makes benevolence good, right? Because if God
Right.
made benevolence good, God could have made malevolence good. But no, it's benevolence that makes God good. It's the other way around. But if we've
So
conceded that,
you're going
then
the independent horn basically.
we've already demonstrated that morality is independent. Now you don't need to be an objective moralist to realize that the theist, when he goes through down this route, has conceding that it's he concedes that morality has to be independent. What is the moral standard here then? It's not because of God, it's because of benevolence. Benevolence is the standard, let's say. Compassion is the standard. These virtues, mercifulness, whatever you want to call it. All of these highly esoteric words, Platonic words, terms, are the axioms of morality. Yeah? These are things that are good. Now let's entertain that for a minute. If that's the case, then you can do this without God, right? God doesn't no longer enters the picture. If Kylie was a virtuous, had these virtues, he was a benevolent person, he was a compassionate
I doubt
person,
that.
yeah, which he
I
is,
doubt
which he's a very bad person. And then Kylie would be a good person. Anything that he says, like if he's an extremely benevolent being, and then we can trust him when he says we should do this, we should do that, right? So what this shows that, yeah, if the independent horn gets proven basically, and if you want to prove, if you end up proving the independent horn, then you've already let go of divine command theory because it doesn't have any more usefulness anymore, because we just go with those virtues, those characteristics, benevolence, and so on. So the
Right,
divine
right.
command theory is, to really prove divine command theory, they need to go down the route of the arbitrary horn. But when they go down the arbitrary horn, then it's going back to subjectiveness again. So they're stuck. Which one is it going to be? And neither answer is satisfactory for them. Yeah.
And I think what is relevant to point out over here is why, in what context, Euthyphro's dilemma is often raised or discussed. Um, it is, I think, it would not have been brought up if theists would not have objected to the atheistic position that that atheists do not have any basis for morality, or something related, or a similar question, maybe that atheists do not have an objective basis for morality. If this question would not have come up, I don't think that this Euthyphro's dilemma would have been raised. Now, maybe Mahadan can correct me, but I think this Euthyphro's dilemma might have been, uh, you know, formulated because of this objection from the theistic side. So, in a way, it's a counter to the objection from the theistic side, not an objection in itself. I think so. It does raise some points, does raise some concerns on its own, as an argument on its own, but I think primarily, at least from my point of view, I take it as a counter, as a counter to the objection that is raised by
Absolutely. No,
theists.
Kylie,
What do
you're
you think,
correct.
Nathan?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. That's what it is. So you can be a nihilist. You can be a nihilist and not defend the idea that you may not believe in an objective morality, but concede that if you try to prove objective morality using divine command theory, you may concede that that doesn't help either, because it ends up because the best version of it ends up being either arbitrary, or the theist ends up conceding that it's independent, right? Now, you may still think that those virtues like benevolence is good, is still, the nihilist would still think that's still not objective, right? So what I'm trying to say is that it's an independent dialectic, like a self-critical kind of inconsistency you want to point out in the theist, and it only comes as a counter argument. You're right. So you can be entirely a non-objectivist about morality, and still think that if you try to build morality into God, you end up with the dilemma, and then try to solve the dilemma, you end up conceding that it's independent, right? That's it. That you just want to point out that even the theist ends up then proving a potential objective morality that is beyond God. That's it. So yeah, you don't need to put forward your own case. It's just a counter argument again in terms of the consistency or the philosophical strength of divine command theory. That's all it is.
Yeah.
All right.